Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, a safe haven for women leaving prison. We talk to a former inmate and a local advocate aiming to bridge the gap between life behind bars and life on the outside. Later in the program, a historic Springfield residence targeted for preservation was once home to a real-life horror story. We discuss the challenges of preserving the iconic, if foreboding, Drew Mansion. But first, the transition out of prison comes with myriad challenges for the formerly incarcerated. But that change can present an entirely different set of challenges for women. Here to discuss it is Rebecca Smith, founder and executive director of the advocacy group R.E.S.T.O.R.E. Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We're also joined by Nadieal Ashe, also known as Ash. Nice to have you. She's the group's house manager and a program graduate. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So, Rebecca, R.E.S.T.O.R.E. stands for Rebuilding Ex-Offenders Successfully Through Opportunities, Rehabilitation, and Education. It's a group that you founded in 2018. Why?
I've always had a heart to serve people. Even as a young child, my family was very active in the community, whether it's serving people in our community food, whether it's working in the church with the homeless, anything that we can do to give back. So I have a history of anxiety and depression, and the majority of the women we serve have a history of anxiety and depression. So just wanting to make a difference in the lives of women, knowing that they just need that support for someone to come alongside them and to help them become a better mom, daughter, grandmother, wife, just to help them to be the best that they can be.
And you've kind of had an eye for the fact that people can fall into situations not of their choosing. And, some of that came from the work that you did working with people who were receiving Medicare. What is it that you learned about kind of life circumstances and how those can shape outcomes for people?
Yeah, but you never know where you'll be. I often ask our donors, people who want to know more about our program, raise your hand if you've done anything or had a thought that could have landed you in prison. And that's all of us if we're really honest about it. A lot of things that we do, we just haven't gotten caught. So we're not above anyone else, and things definitely could happen to us. And I always keep that in mind.
A lot of hands go up when you ask that question.
They do, even in church. Even in church, because we have all sinned and fallen short. So, it's definitely possible.
Do you personally have any connection to people who've been incarcerated? Is that anything that you've experienced in your own life, in your own family's life, close friends?
Yes, I've had close friends and family who've been impacted by the justice system.
And
Yes.
what has that taught you? What were there things about it that when you first encountered it, you were surprised by, things that you've learned through their experience?
Yes, because, they've served their time, they've done their due diligence, but once they get out, they're still viewed in a negative light when it comes to, getting jobs, securing housing, and things of that sort. So that really played another role in me, coming in, trying to help as many women as I can.
Yeah. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the current projects that R.E.S.T.O.R.E. has going on. But Ash, one of the things that they do have are a couple of existing homes that provide a place for women who are leaving the system to transition. And there's a new project underway that we'll talk about. But first of all, can you just talk about what the homes provide? You are kind of a house manager of one of them.
Yes.
So what is it that you provide to the women now? And what is it that is most helpful from your own experience that they need?
What's most helpful from my own experience is the fact that as much as a lot of people don't like um, structure, there's structure. And it's something that you need. And it has definitely helped me in a lot of ways, as well as the counseling that the program provides.
Yeah.
Because at one point I was dead set against mental health counseling because of a incident that happened when I was 13. And the counseling that I received in prison, plus the counseling that I'm also receiving now, helps me in a mental way. Because after you get out of prison, you have the sometimes the mental that you have to deal with, as they say, once whatever age you got locked up is the age you stop growing mentally and emotionally. And once you get out, you're in that same mindset. And I can say that because that's what happened to me. I was locked up at 17. Yes, I survived 25 years out of a life sentence in prison. And once I got out, I thought I was ready to adult. And that came as a big surprise. The one thing that I did say was I was not going to stop running because I feel like if I stopped running, I would be complacent and I would get stuck. And fortunately, Miss Smith didn't allow me to stop running. She actually was like, "You might want to slow down,"
Mm.
but I couldn't slow down because there was a fear of slowing down and the fear of hearing the gates close again and not being able to walk out of them scared me. And sometimes to this day, it scares me. But the provisions that I give to the ladies once they come in the house is guidance. I'm like a counselor. I help them wherever they need, when they need. Once they get to the house, um, I take them shopping, get to know them, and throughout their whole process of being in the home, I get to know them. We sit down and talk at least once or twice a day. Once I like my day as it goes, I'm up at 3, I work till 4, I come home, check on the ladies, we have dinner, sit around, we talk and how was your day? Because you have some ladies that are going to Operation New Hope. And sometimes that can be a challenge, especially with the men. Um, they'll sit down there, talk about the good things that happen throughout their day. We help them get food assistance, the counseling. It's like a whole family,
Mm.
and it's a family away from a family, and it's where you have to get you together before you can help anybody else. And that's one thing that we all want to do because we have this idea when we get, well, while we're incarcerated, of how life is going to be once we get out, and it's in our mind of how we want to make it. But once you hit the ground, it's like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is like, and I've always had God in my life, and I never left him. He's never left me, and that is the reason why, another reason why I strive the way I do. And I, let the ladies know that, hey, you had him while you was incarcerated, so have him here still. And that faith foundation is something that I help build on as well.
I want to ask you about, you said going into the system when you were 17 years old, and I can only imagine that that was an incredibly frightening experience. I don't know if people think about being released as a frightening experience, but can you kind of compare the two for us?
In all honesty, when I got locked up, I was scared. At 17, you had to I had to make a life changing decision. Either I took a 6-man jury without the death penalty on the table, or a 12-man jury with the death penalty on the table. And I opted out for a 6-man jury. But I didn't know at the time that God was in the works of all of this. So at that time when I got sentenced, in my heart, it was, whew. And once I stepped into the prison for the first time, it was very shocking. And it kind of looked like a big college campus. And the first thing I did once I went through the whole orientation and stuff like that and went to my room is I got on my knees and I prayed. And I told God, like, I can't do this by myself. I can't. And I learned the system, the prison system, on how to stay out of trouble. However, it didn't work too well with me because I did at least 3 years of confinement, um, in and out for 3 years because I still had that mentality and mindset of I'm going to live my life in here as if I would live it out there. And one night, I was invited to a church service and at Broward Correctional, and I'm sitting there, I'm listening, and this lady comes out the crowd, and she looks at me and she says, "Come here," and I'm like, "No." And then she says, "You're gonna make me come get you," and I'm like, "Let me go because I don't want to be embarrassed." And when I walked in front of her, the first thing she told me was, "You won't do all that time." And I'm looking at her like, she's like, "The life sentence that you have, you won't do it." And in my mind, I'm thinking, nobody told her that but God, because nobody in that area knew me. They didn't know how much time I got. So I took that, I received it, and the next morning I got up early, went out to the bleachers, and with my coffee and cried, and I talked to God. I said, I'm laying all this out because if this is what you have planned for me for the rest of my life, I'll be okay with it as long as you're with me. But if this is not the plan that you have for me, show me because I can't do it by myself. And, throughout my years of going from one place to the next, being transferred, I had a very, one person that took the time to pull me aside because I was working in classification. And Miss Terry Ross, I'll never forget her name. She says, "Ash, come in here. Let me talk to you." And I say, "Yes, ma'am." She says, "I've been watching you for 2 months." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm thinking automatically, oh, I'm in trouble. But she's like, "What is it that you want to do with your life?" And I explained to her that I wanted to be a lawyer. And she said, "Well, what's holding you back?" I said, "Well, Miss Ross, I have a life sentence." She says, "What do you want to do now?" I said, "Well, I need to get my GED." She says, "Okay." She made a few phone calls, and at that time, if you had a life sentence, you couldn't get into school. So she made a few calls.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she got me in school.
That's right. In prison, they prioritize programs for people who are actually going to be released, and you with a life sentence wouldn't have been eligible.
No. And then she made the call, and she came back to me and she said, "You're going to school. Don't disappoint me." And when she said that, and we're not allowed to touch the staff, but I jumped up and hugged her because she fought for me. So in my mind and in my heart, I owe her that. I owe her not to disappoint her. And I also got into the law library. So I was doing two things at one time, studying for my law certification as well as getting my GED. And I finished my law certification and I got a 98%. They bring people from 5 different, all the female prisons, and we all have to test. And I was number 2. And I was excited about that. And when I walked for my GED in 2004, Miss Ross was right there.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, "I told you I would disappoint you."
Ash, the reason that you're out, and before the program, you were saying it's going to be 5 years in April.
Yes.
Which is, quite a momentous landmark. The law changed, which is in part the reason that you were resentenced. The judge in that case, because you were sentenced as a juvenile to life in prison, and the law changed as science changed and our understanding of young brains and how they're not fully developed. But you were in prison for murder.
Yes.
And a judge who oversaw your resentencing really believed in your rehabilitation, really believed in the work that you had done to change yourself and to, be somebody that would be a productive member of society. And so you were released after 25 years, which was the minimum.
Yes.
Um,
No, actually, it was life without parole. And see, that's why I say God was in the midst of that, because I had just missed the life with parole when I was sentenced.
okay. And so you weren't eligible for parole, but the judge, when he reduced your sentence to a 40-year sentence,
Yes.
you were eligible for parole at 25 years. Is that right?
No,
No,
I was eligible for a hearing,
okay.
a resentencing hearing.
Uh-huh.
So when that happened, it was, I think it was like 2018.
Mhm.
I had enough game time to push me out the door.
Gotcha.
However, they sent me back for 18 months because I had to give them the 25 years.
Okay.
So it was reduced from natural life to 40. And from 40, within that 40, I received a 25-year review.
Okay. Rebecca, how unique is Ashe's story in terms of, the circumstances of women that you encounter when they're being released and you're helping them?
We've had about 2 or 3 women who served 15 to 25 years, but all of it still, as far as I'm concerned, it goes back to trauma. Ashe experienced things as a very young girl, which I think, as well as she can, she can speak to, attribute it to some of the decisions that she made. So that's why it's really important for me and our organization. And we tell the ladies all the time, like Ashe, are ready to get out, they're ready to get a job, they're ready to save money, they're ready to get a car and all these things. But, what's most important to me and our supporters is for the women to heal from the inside out, right? Because until you heal that, the chances of you repeating that behavior could be higher. And as far as for Ashe, when we first started, and she usually shares this, we were not accepting women with violent offenses. Because, I'm new to this, I came from the Medicare world. I'm trying to figure things out. But I had a interview with Ashe, a video interview, and it was just something about her that drew me to her. And the work she shared, the work that she'd done while she was in there. And, I just, thought about the role model that she could be for other women who's coming into our program. So Ashe is the reason that, we work with women with violent charges. And to be honest, most of the women with those charges are the most successful because they're so grateful. They've served a lot of time. They get out and they're so grateful for the opportunity to start over again.
Yeah. I mean, it's an unusual opportunity afforded someone under these juvenile resentencings like Ashe.
Correct.
But she probably served longer than many of the clients that you see. That's a very long time.
Most. We've
Yeah.
had one who served 15,
Mhm.
but as far as time served, 25 years is the max.
I mean, the research does show that the experience of women who are in prison or in jail, that the way that they get there is often very different than how men get to jail. And it is often, to your point, rooted in trauma. Most women who are in the system have experienced some kind of abuse in their life. And unlike men, the abuse that women experience doesn't typically end after the teen years. It's something that they can, are very often victimized throughout adulthood if they're in circumstances like that. A lot of times, if they have a drug dependency, it is kind of married to a relationship that they've had in some way. And so their needs are a little bit different in terms of resolving those sources of trauma.
Yes. And also while they're in prison, experience violence and trauma as well. And that's why I'm just a firm believer in our case management where, you have a case manager sit down with them and to go over their childhood, things that they've experienced, things they want to accomplish, and come alongside them to help them accomplish those goals. We have one-on-one counseling with counselors that I would go see. Like, I believe in providing service to the women we serve that I would receive, who, they get the opportunity to open up and share. We recently had 2 new ladies to come, and they said they've never experienced like counseling sessions like that. So we really believe in providing the best service possible for our clients because they deserve the best. And oftentimes they don't think they deserve it. They'll come into the house. This house is really nice. This is the best, house that I've ever lived in and things of that sort. But our goal is to make it a home and for us to be united as women and to be united as families, to help them to go back and potentially reunite with their children, their family. A lot of times they've burned bridges. So when they come, family members may not be talking to them and things of that sort. And I just keep saying, just keep doing the right thing. Keep proving yourself. When you get any type of certificates, take pictures, send it to them. So we've had the opportunity to see, families reunited, and that's just priceless moments for us.
One of the things that's unique about your group too is that you have invested in building these facilities from the ground up. And so you're not occupying spaces that are in any way compromised. They really are these kind of new, beautiful home-like spaces that the women are brought to. In terms of, personal and childhood experiences, Ash, I mean, you had an incredibly traumatic childhood, you know, witnessing abuse and then witnessing, a murder, something that you had to testify, in a case against your father.
Yes.
And, that is a tragedy really beyond measure, but it is something that I think is in your experience and in your testimony has been an important part of kind of the path that you took in the short term, especially in your teen years, which was a really troubled period.
Yes. It played a major part, and I didn't realize how much of a part it played in my upbringing until I actually sat down and spoke with the counselor about it. And I had to realize that I had just continued a cycle that I was basically born into. And at some point, I realized you have to break this cycle. And I had to understand that in order to break it, because there was a lot of hatred and discord and stuff like that. And I had to say, hey, you're different.
Mm.
So you have to break the cycle. And I found that forgiveness took me a long way.
Forgiveness is powerful and difficult. There is a great need out there. The number of women who've been incarcerated, Rebecca, in the last, 30 years has skyrocketed, by hundreds of percentage. And so there are more and more women that are in need of services. And that's in part why you all are trying to expand. You've got a new facility. I don't know if you've broken ground yet, but can you give us an update?
We have not. Yes,
Okay.
we are in the process of building a quadplex. So we have 2 transitional homes right now. We can house up to 14 ladies. Then we have what you call a step-up home. So this is the house where you actually pay rent instead of program fees. So it's tenant to landlord. And then we're in the process of building a quadplex for independent living for our ladies who graduate from the program. Because first of all, affordable housing these days are really not affordable, right? So we work hard to raise money, and we had an awesome partnership with the Dolores Weaver Fund where she gave us a $400,000 match, and we were responsible for raising $400,000. So with the help of the Jim Moran Foundation and everyday people, we were able to raise the $400. So hopefully we'll break ground in a couple of months. We were actually hoping that we would break ground a few months ago, but then we found out we needed to get a retention pond.
Oh.
So we kind of had to go back and make changes. So we are working with our engineers now to help us to move forward with that. So hopefully by summer of next year, we should be up and running, and that'll provide six additional spaces for ladies who are graduating from our program. So really excited about that.
And you've got a fundraiser coming up in just a couple days?
I do, November 7th.
Okay.
We have last I checked, we had like 7 tickets left and a table. So it'll be here actually on November 7th. And we're really excited about that. So the majority of the money that we raise goes towards our housing project. So, yeah. So if you get an opportunity, go to restoreduval.com and purchase a ticket or a table for your group, we'll be more than happy to have you. It's a dance, dine, and donate. And we have it every first Friday in November, and we're really excited about it.
We've also got a link on the First Coast Connect website. And I thank you both for being here. Rebecca Smith, Nadieal Ashe, good luck with everything. Thanks for coming in and talking about this.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, a historic residence with a real-life horror story behind it. Welcome back. Springfield's historic Drew Mansion could get an influx of cash restoration money thanks to the advocacy of a local lawmaker. But what will it take to save it? And just exactly what history does it hold? Here to tell us about it is Tim Gilmore, author, educator, and historian at Jack Psycho Geo. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Ann.
We're also joined by former Jacksonville City Council member Bill Bishop, an architect at the firm of Akel, Logan, and Schaefer. Good morning, Bill.
Morning, Ann.
So the Horace Drew Mansion, actually named for Dr. Horace Drew, actual person.
Yep.
And, he was a fairly, prominent person in the city, came from a fairly prominent family, and built this remarkable house. Tim, it's at the corner of, it's kind of on Clutho Park, at the corner of 3rd and Pearl. Tell us a little bit about it.
It is an incredible house. Anybody who drives by it, I mean, it leaves a mark in your mind, Horace Drew was a physician. He built it in 1909, and he was from, one of the earliest Jacksonville families. It's a kind of a mix of a whole bunch of so-called revival architectural styles from the time: Mediterranean revival, Queen Anne, Tudor revival. It's got a tower on one side. It's got this hexagonal porch on the other side, and it's kind of prominently placed over the landscape from its corner. It's a really imposing structure, and it's been in really bad shape for a really long time, but it is one of the signature houses. I mean, I'm not a Springfield resident. I love Springfield, but I would say it's probably one of the most well-known houses in Springfield. Used to be on postcards, in the early 20th century. So yeah, it's an incredible house.
Yeah, Bill, it is it's an odd looking house. And I think that, it is sort of, it is imposing. It may not be to everyone's taste in terms of the architectural elements of it, because it is a little bit weird, and people who watch our live stream can see pictures of it. But what is it that kind of accrues to a building like that is unusual, strange, imposing, and then sort of becomes part of the narrative of a place like Springfield?
Well, it's all of that. That building, I would classify, it's a neighborhood icon. It's, as Tim was describing the architectural style, I call it early 20th century eclectic. It's got everything in it. Okay. But when you put it all together, it works. It's on an imposing site. It's raised up high. It looked, because of the way it's built off grade on its foundation, it looks like it's on a hill. And so it creates a presence by where it is and how big it is and its whole, everything about it. In a lot of ways, it's like a suburban Hayden Burns library. That's a structure downtown that you either love it or you hate it.
Now, when you say the Hayden Burns Library, you're talking about the Jesse.
The Jesse, right?
Yeah. So that's the historic. kind of, it's got the wings on
It's
the
got
side.
exactly. That building it's an icon just because of what it is. And the Drew Mansion in a residential setting is a lot like that. Some people hate that thing. It's just
Hmm.
god awful. It's got everything. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what makes people love it.
It's almost a little bit like the McMansion of its day, it just sort of has this, like, element of, like, let's put a little of this and a little of that. I mean, am I overstating the case, Tim?
I don't think so. I think that's really, really an interesting way to put it. We tend to look down on McMansions. I love that you use the phrase "a cruise to" because I feel like that about historic structures, that their history, their stories accrue to them. And yeah, I mean, it's a gaudy house, and
But sort of magnificent,
it's
imposing.
I don't think I would, I think if it were new, I wouldn't care for it so much, but I love it. It's old. It's got all of these crazy stories attached to it. It's an artifact of its time, and it's different in this time by living all the years it's lived there.
Well, the
There,
stories that go along with it do add to the panache of the thing.
sure.
It becomes more than just a structure.
Yeah.
There are also, I mean, we'll get to those stories because those are a crazy part of the history of this house. But it does have some elements that are architecturally interesting, Bill, and one of them is what's called a crying porch, which is, I guess, a place for literally for people to take a crying infant so it doesn't disturb the rest of the household. That's kind of on the back side of this building. And the stone used is kind of a mix of concrete block and a more, I guess, elegant stone in its making. Um,
Well,
all of
it's a combination of the concrete block that was used throughout. You see it all over Riverside. It's cast as if it was rough cut stone,
uh
and so it's got a lot of character. I love that concrete block. I don't know. I don't even think you can get it anymore unless you made it custom, but it gave it an elegance.
It's like beveled at the edges, sort
Yeah,
of.
it's supposed to simulate rough cut stone. The window lintels and all of that were more traditional cast stone, which is basically architectural concrete, but it was made to look like cut stone. So in a sense, it's a stone building built on the cheap,
We are,
but it was built with materials that today we would consider expensive.
yeah. So this is a project that has recently been earmarked. It hasn't yet gotten the money, but Representative Wyman Duggan, who's a Republican from Jacksonville, has asked for $375,000 to kind of get going on a renovation that has been in the works and in the minds of the community for more than a decade, well more than a decade. What does that put a dent in what's going to be needed to get this thing back into any kind of habitable shape?
That's probably about 10% of the money that will be needed to fully renovate, restore, rehabilitate that building based on our experience on dealing with buildings like this. What that money can do is stabilize it, stabilize some of the structural problems with it, and close up the outside of it to keep water out. That's really the biggest problem that building has, and the biggest danger to it not surviving is that it's simply open to the weather. And the more rain that gets in it, the more rot's going to happen, and that money can be used to attempt to stop that.
This would just sort of staunch the decay a little
Right,
bit.
right.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Tim Gilmore and Bill Bishop about the Horace-Drew Mansion in Springfield. If you have questions or comments about the building or the renovation, give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on social media. So the house, Tim, is not just, this architectural piece, but it is full of stories, and some of them are really quite terrifying.
That's true. Yeah, in fact, 1970, uh, uh, newspaper wire services referred to it as the haunted house of Jacksonville. I'd like to think that we had more than one, if you believe in that kind of thing. But there was a really strange thing that happened in the summer of 1970 at this house, and that was there were two little boys from the neighborhood who were just playing around it. It's a scary old house. Who knows what they were doing? And they found it had been raining, and they found this place in the backyard where it was kind of caved in. So they were curious, and they were sticking sticks down there, and they found something in a bag. and it didn't seem right. They looked at it. It scared them. They ran and got two older boys from the neighborhood, and they came and pulled it out, and it was actually a human head in a bag, in a germicidal bag. And so homicide investigators, came and tried to figure out had somebody been murdered, and
What is a
the head placed
germicidal
there.
bag? What does that mean?
Well, that's a good question. To my understanding, it means that there were some kind of medical preservatives that kept it from decaying as fast. So it came from the Duval County Medical Center, actually. When there was a homicide investigator named Paul Short who found an person who was unnamed in news reporting at the time, just referred to as an unnamed informant, who said that a friend of his, who was an orderly at the hospital nearby, had stolen the head from the Duval County Medical Center, and then I ended up speaking with Paul Short's daughter. He's passed away. And she remembered the case, and she said that. So this is not directly from a source, right? I realize that, but she said that her father said, right, that the orderly had first taken the head home and had kept it in his bed, and that supposedly, I doubt this, but that it had been. It had come from someone that he knew, and he wanted to keep it as a souvenir of having known this person, but then he became afraid of getting caught, so he buried it in the back of the Drew mansion.
Do we know how like a head became available to an orderly? Was this
I don't think so.
Okay.
If anybody listening has any knowledge of what was going on at the Duval Medical Center in 1970 and can explain that, I would love to know.
I had seen in one report that there had been a head reported missing
Mm.
previously, like in '69.
Yeah, so right, so same head. I mean, maybe that's a good thing to know. This orderly had he had stolen it and buried it in early November 1969. So it was July of 1970 when these kids found it. Several months had gone by.
And this made at least made statewide headlines, I should say. It wasn't probably a national story, but it was certainly something that was picked up by newspapers around Florida.
I think it got picked up nationally. I mean, it's a weird enough story that, if you're in, I don't know, some other part of the country, wherever Jacksonville is, this is a thing that people are going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, there was another kind of element to the scary history of this house, and that was an actual crime that occurred in the house when some kids went into play there, and a couple of girls were
true.
kidnapped and assaulted. So there was that element too, a very kind of horrific crime.
Yeah, so not that stealing a head is not horrific, but but this is certainly a darker story, I think, than even people finding a head, that there was a sexual assault that happened in the house. Kids would break into it in the 70s, just like, teenagers are often drawn to haunted houses, right? Especially if they seem to be real, if they're in abandoned structures in the city. And, Springfield was close to rock bottom at the time. So that happened there as well. That's a less entertaining story, I suppose. Not that, again, stealing a head is okay.
Is right. Sure. Bill, when it comes to the challenges of historic preservation, either specific to this house or just generally speaking, what are some of the things other than exposure to weather, which we've talked about, and kind of the elements getting in? What are some of the things that are, in some cases, I guess, prohibitive to allowing a structure to be rehabbed?
Well, the biggest problems are going to be structural in nature. If the building structure, what holds it up, the foundations underneath, or some of the main support beams and columns inside the building are failing, those can get really expensive to fix, because you've got to shore everything up to replace these things. Those are really the tough part. Internal framing of the building, that's simply essentially holding up the roof. When those have to be replaced and restored, that's what gets really expensive on it. You can almost all of the wiring, all of the plumbing, all of the air conditioning, or whatever's left of it in there, all has to be replaced because there's at this point there's nothing salvageable about it. So that's a given. And you're threading all of that stuff within the structure of an existing building that was never designed to have this stuff in the first place. That makes it a challenge from a design perspective. How do you, if you're going to try to restore the building, how do you run air conditioning ducts through a building that never had it to begin with and make it look like it's not an obvious, badly done add-on? So that adds some time and expense in creating things to, in a sense, hide this stuff. But the biggest problems are structural.
And structural may be a pretty big hurdle for this one. I mean, we know that there has been years of flooding from nearby Hogan's Creek. It has sounded, at least in some assessments, that the building is sinking a little bit, that it's not entirely level, and that shoring up job would actually be part of the.
Oh, that's definitely true because the foundation, when people built buildings like that back in the day, the foundations of them are not nearly as good as what we would do today. That whole entire building, as big as it is constructed on a series of brick piers. So it's mostly empty underneath there. And you build a series of brick piers, and it's supported by beams, and then everything goes up from there. So if you don't have the foundations of those piers sitting on solid ground, and that whole area moves. I mean, the water table's high. The ground isn't all that stable in places. So, yeah, it's going to kind of move with the dirt. And so that means the building settles. And so that can become a very complicated exercise to get it leveled up and build foundations underneath an existing building that will adequately support it.
So as an architect, and someone came to you with this project, would you say, let's do it, let's forge ahead, let's take this, allocation of state money and get the process rolling, or would you throw up your hands?
Oh, I would. Anything can be restored given enough time and money.
Okay.
What's the motivation of the owner? If the owner wants to make money on this, the odds are it won't get done because the economics of it just don't work. I mean, a good example of that is the Cowford Chop House downtown. They're going to have to sell a lot of steaks to pay for that renovation over a long period of time. They spent way more money than they expected to do it, but they did it anyway. We've been involved in projects like that where the owners aren't going to receive a return on it. Their descendants are going to receive a return on it. This is one of those kind of buildings just because of what's going to be involved in fixing it up.
Tim Gilmore, just last thoughts about this because we're going to have to wrap.
Yeah, it's just one of the most incredible houses in the city, and to actually your question earlier about things accruing to, and to Bill's comment about stories becoming part of the panache of a place. I mean, houses kind of evolve through time. And, I would love to see this saved. I know lots of people would. I hope it can happen, It's a remarkable place.
Well,
it is. I hope it can be restored because it would be an icon for Springfield if it does.
Sure.
For the
All right.
city, yeah.
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 Well, Tim Gilmore, Bill Bishop, thanks so much for coming on today to talk about it. I really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Ann.
All right. Up next, from zombie stars to skull comets, we celebrate Halloween in the cosmos.
Hey, it's Stephen Thompson from NPR Music. I turn to music when the world and the news feels heavy. It could be rock or country or hip hop. Exploring new music and hearing artists pursue beauty and push boundaries makes me feel connected, inspired. At NPR and this station, we know music can help you get through the day. You can invest in this coverage by making a donation right now. Thank you so much.
Visit WJCT.org/radio.
On the next Fresh Air, director Nia DaCosta, who brought us the Candyman reboot and Marvel's Miss Marvel, is back with an adaptation of Henrik Ibsen's 1891 play Hedda, about a woman trapped in a life she never wanted. DaCosta's version is set in the 50s, a period she describes as the Great Pretending. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
The Sims, FIFA, Madden, iconic video games from Electronic Arts, one of the industry's most influential makers. Private equity firms are poised to take over EA in a massive leveraged buyout, and not everyone's excited about it.
All of this consolidation has been very bad for the industry, and we're continuing to head in that direction.
What happens when private equity owns the games you play? That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11, here on WJCT News 89.9.
More than 400 anti-science bills have been introduced in states across the country. They focus on restricting fluoride in water, making unpasteurized milk easier to sell, and rolling back vaccine access. Who's pushing these bills, and what do they mean for the future of public health? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, in space, no one can hear you scream, as they like to say. But that doesn't mean you're safe here on Earth. Eddie Whistler joins us now. He's the director.
There are plenty of horrible places on Earth.
Our resident spaceman. He is the planetarium director at the Museum of Science and History. It's good to see you, Eddie.
Hello. Good to see you, too.
Good to see you, too. There is so many things in the sky right now that are reason for either celebration or just some people are actually afraid. I want to start with one that's been getting some traction in the world of news and social media, which is this comet that some people are saying is an alien ship of some kind or under alien control. Tell me what the deal is here.
No comment.
No comment.
No, I'm just joking.
Okay.
Yeah. Comet looks like to be a comet. It is slowing down, approaching us, turning on headlights. It's going to arrive in November and settle into what looks like a near-Earth orbit. I'm just joking. None of that stuff is true. But that's the kind of thing that we would look for if we were looking at something arriving as an alien object coming into our solar system. And none of the behavior that I just mentioned is anything that we see from this object.
I mean, people who've observed it have said it's acting unusual.
Super unusual.
And
this is the cool part of all of it, is that this is a comet that we know is from another star system because it's moving at speeds that make it so that it can't be harnessed by our solar system's gravity. So it will come through, it will pass out. As a matter of fact, this is the fourth one of those that we found.
Why are people saying that this could be a malignant something with malignant intent or with an alien connection? What's the justification for that?
Internet.
Because the internet.
Because.
But there's this Harvard-trained, astrologer that has said this. It's not that he believes this, but he has put forth a theory that he says could be something.
So, I am far less well-trained than somebody like Avi Loeb is the name of the astronomer who's putting this out. But at the same time, if you read the comments that are put out, of course, he gives this a very low probability, so on and so forth. This is a very strange object, and it's behaving in waves that, it moves like a comet, although faster. It's made up of comet-type stuff, although the ratios of carbon dioxide and water are very weird. It has an anti-tail, material that's being put out towards the sun, which is really strange for a comet. There's so much about this that is very strange, but we should expect very strange things from objects that are coming to us from star systems that are not our own.
The fact that it's acting weird does not necessarily mean it's being operated by an alien.
Yeah,
just
no
to be
doubt.
clear. Okay.
And at the same time, anything can be alien. It is a possibility that something out in space could be. But when you weigh all the evidence, which one better explains this object? I would put all my bets on in a year and a half from now, we forget about this object and we learn about hundreds more of these interstellar travelers.
I want to talk about another spooky thing, and that is ghost nebula in the sky, in the Milky Way.
Yeah, ghostly nebulae from once living stars that have perished and blown themselves to smithereens and interact with their surroundings to give them this kind of lit up, ghostly remnant. One of the most famous ones is called Cassiopeia A. It's inside of the constellation Cassiopeia. We could find it in the sky this evening if you knew where to look. And not that we would be able to see it, but we could look with telescope. We could find the constellation, and then within the constellation is this thing that you need instruments in order to see these beautiful ghostly nebulae.
If we were going to look for it, roughly, where in the sky would we be looking?
So north, Cassiopeia is a W-shaped star, really made famous. Well, it depends on its orientation. It could look like a W. It could look like a 3. It could look like an M. But this kind of jagged WM3 shape, right? And then in and about there.
Yeah.
Without having to describe a location.
There are also other things in the sky that are sort of Halloween themed.
I love them.
Yeah, there's skull comets. There's other weird noises that kind of creep us out that we've been able to capture from black holes and other things in space.
Oh, you could hear it. So this is called data sonification, and there's a lot of different ways that you could do this. So we receive data. We don't receive sound from space because in space, nobody can hear you scream. There's no medium for this stuff to come to ears, but there are pressure waves. There are electromagnetic waves. We receive data in infrared and in X-rays and in radio waves. We receive all of this, and what scientists are able to do is take those data and turn them into sound waves, because we can turn waves into sound waves that then we can hear. And it actually opens up a new window on what we can learn.
Well, we'll take another listen as we leave. Eddie Whistler, thanks so much for joining us today.
You're super welcome.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
All right. And thank you for listening. If you have comments or questions, you can send either to First Coast Connect, WJCT.org. Join us tomorrow when we talk to Republican gubernatorial hopeful Paul Renner and take your calls and questions. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
Tonight at 9, join us for Public Radio Music Day 2025 as we celebrate the local music programs of WJCT. Join us for a preview of our weekend music shows tonight at 9 with The Neighborhood with Mr. Al Pete, followed by Bob City, Electro Lounge, and Blues Horizon.
This is WJCT News.